Before cannons roared, a pen declared war. In the mid-17th century, the world's oceans belonged to the Dutch. Their merchant fleets, a vast and seemingly endless armada, were the lifeblood of global trade. From the spice-rich islands of the East Indies to the burgeoning colonies in the Americas, Dutch ships carried the world's wealth. The port of Amsterdam wasn't just a harbor. It was the world's warehouse, a bustling metropolis built on profits from silk, spices, timber, and grain. The Dutch Republic had perfected the art of maritime commerce, acting as the planet's great middlemen. They bought goods from one corner of the globe and sold them to another, their efficiency and scale making them the undisputed masters of the sea. Their flag was a symbol of prosperity seen in every major port, a constant reminder of their economic dominance. But across the Channel, in England, a different sentiment was brewing. English ports like London and Bristol watched with a mixture of envy and frustration. While Dutch warehouses overflowed, English merchants struggled. Their ships were fewer, their trade routes less profitable. They saw Dutch vessels sailing in and out of their own harbors, carrying goods that English ships could have been transporting. A sense of national pride was wounded. How could a small republic across the water hold such a tight grip on global trade, while a powerful kingdom like England was left picking up the scraps? The calls grew louder in the halls of power. Merchants petitioned Parliament, sailors grumbled in taverns, and politicians debated. The question was not if England should challenge the Dutch, but how. Open war was a costly, bloody affair. There had to be another way, a cleaner, smarter way to fight. The answer wouldn't be found on the battlefield, but in the pages of a law book. In October of 1651, the English Parliament forged its weapon. It wasn't made of steel or iron, but of ink and parchment. The Navigation Act was born. Inside the grand chambers of Westminster, quills scratched across paper, a seal was pressed, and with that, the world of trade was turned upside down. The law itself was deceptively simple. It decreed that any goods imported into England or its colonies had to be carried on English ships with majority English crews, or on ships from the country where the goods originated. It was a declaration of economic nationalism, a move to build a self-reliant English trading empire. The law never mentioned the Dutch, but it was written for them. Every single clause was a dagger aimed at the heart of their business model. The Dutch didn't produce most of what they traded. They were carriers. Suddenly, their ships, laden with spices from Asia or timber from the Baltic, were legally barred from English ports. The law was a ghost, an invisible barrier that slammed the door shut on the world's greatest merchant fleet. The impact was immediate and global. Along the coastlines of Europe and beyond, the new English policy sent shock waves. A Dutch ship carrying valuable timber from Norway would be stopped by an English naval patrol and turned away from London. A vessel loaded with sugar from a French colony, captained by a Dutchman, would be denied entry to an English colonial port in North America. Inspections became common. English captains, now empowered by law, would board Dutch ships, scrutinizing their cargo manifests and crew lists. Any violation meant seizure. The cargo, the ship, everything could be taken as a prize. For the Dutch, this was more than an inconvenience. It was economic strangulation. Trade routes that had been profitable for generations were suddenly disrupted. The seamless flow of goods that the Dutch had perfected now hit a legal wall. Prices for everyday items like wine, salt, and spices began to climb in England as the most efficient carriers were forced out of the market. But for English merchants, it was a lifeline. Their ships were now protected, guaranteed a share of the trade. The English merchant marine began to grow, funded by the very trade being denied to their rivals. In the bustling cities of the Netherlands, from Amsterdam to Rotterdam, outrage boiled over. Merchants who had built fortunes on free trade saw their profits vanish overnight. Ship owners stared at their vessels, now idling in port, their crews unpaid. The numbers told a grim story of mounting losses. This wasn't just business, it was an attack on their entire way of life. Dutch diplomats were dispatched to London, arguing, pleading, and threatening. They called the Navigation Act an act of piracy, a thinly veiled declaration of war. They argued that it violated the very principles of free seas that had made Europe prosperous. But the English government, led by Oliver Cromwell, stood firm. This was about national security and economic destiny. They saw the act as a necessary step to build England's strength and reduce its dependence on a foreign power. Public anger in the Netherlands grew fierce. The Dutch people, proud of their maritime heritage, saw England's legal maneuver as an existential threat. Their leaders, once hesitant to provoke a conflict, now faced immense pressure from their own citizens. They began to realize that England's paper war was just as damaging as a real one. The time for diplomacy was ending. The calm before the storm is often the most unsettling. On the seas, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. What began as legal inspections started to feel more like military confrontations. English warships patrolled the Channel, their presence a constant show of force. Dutch merchant convoys began sailing with armed escorts, their own warships ready to defend them. Both nations started to prepare for what now seemed inevitable. Shipyards in both England and the Netherlands worked day and night, building new, more powerful warships. Cannons were cast, gunpowder was stockpiled, and thousands of sailors were recruited. The sea, once a highway for commerce, was transforming into a potential battlefield. Each side watched the other, waiting for the first move, the first mistake, the first shot. The world held its breath. An entire era of global trade, built by the Dutch and challenged by the English, was about to come to a violent end. The war did not begin with the thunder of cannons or the splintering of wood. It began quietly in a chamber filled with politicians with the stroke of a pen. The First Anglo-Dutch War began not with fire, but with ink. Thanks for watching. If you found this piece of history fascinating, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories from the past. See you next time.